Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Exponential Success Coach. And today I am thrilled. Met this gentleman through kind of a strange network thing and then got a chance to speak with him. He's young, he's sassy, he's bold. He taught me something in the first couple of minutes that we met, and it was like, all right, yeah, I definitely want to have him as a guest. Brandon Fong grew up. Well, his story is one that I think everybody can, if not relate to, at least relate to. It's a true rags to riches story, and he's just such a helper and a lifter of people along the way. So, Brandon, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Dr. P, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to hang out today. It's going to be awesome.
It is awesome. It's awesome already, Brandon. This is awesome. Okay, so here's what I know about you. I'm going to start with what really struck me, just kind of like, all right, this guy is bold and sassy and spot on. And if he's willing to tell the truth in this way, I really want to get to know him more. And you asked me a question in one of our first meetings, and that was, hey, if you looked at your own landing pages, if you looked at your own copy, and you were your target market, would you actually want to click through to either register or get more? And I'm like, nope. No, I wrote my stuff. This was, a while ago. I wrote my stuff because I thought it was clever. And it was really great. Like I'm one where if you hold up the mirror and you go, take a deep look, I'm like, all right, some things need to change. So I appreciated that, because that's bold and sassy. You didn't really know me, and you offered that as kind of clarity for me. So I really appreciate that. And it is.
Well, I will say, Dr. P, I didn't know you, but I did know you, because I saw your content. I saw what you're about. I saw you're about improvement, and anybody that practices that or shares that content, I felt safe. So I think I don't get described as sassy that much, but I guess just something, the way that we clicked right away, I felt empowered and okay with sharing that. So I'm glad that stood out, and I'm glad that we're here continuing the conversation.
I am too. So given that, like, you have great insight. So given that, let's focus on a few things. I always start when I have guests on, I like to wind back the clock, as I call it. Wind back the clock. There's little gap tooth, glasses wearing, elementary school Brandon, who's embarrassed about joining a lunch line. Can you talk about that? Why don't you start with that? And yeah, I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah. So you listening, and you, Dr. P, I'm going to invite you to be my invisible partner in this story. So you're there. I can't see you. You're kind of like a little bit of a ghost. So we're at Wisconsin Hills Middle School. We're in Wisconsin, and we're in Mrs. Dentisi's 6th grade classroom. And we just finished the class, and there's that period where everybody's kind of staring and waiting for the clock to turn to the next minute, because when the bell rings, everybody gets to go to lunch, the most exciting part of the day, right? So the bell finally rings. You see everybody just jump to their feet and make a beeline for the cafeteria, but you're here, you're watching, and you see that there's this one kid that is still packing his bags, despite the fact that he had a few minutes to do it ahead of time. He's kind of slowly making his way to the lunch line. And if you haven't guessed, that kid was me. And Dr. P already kind of described myself. But if you're watching, I don't know if you're watching, but I like he said, I got a Bugs Bunny gap in my front teeth. I got some kind of spectacle looking glasses. And I'm slowly making my way to the lunch line because I'm super nervous. And the reason why is because as I'm sitting in the lunch line, I watch as one person goes to the checkout line and he types in his student ID in the keypad, and then it shows up on the screen $5. Another friend goes through and he types in his student ID and it says $6.50 because he got a dessert because he's always getting desserts. And my heart's racing at this point. And I get up, I type in my student ID 156403. Never forget my student ID. And it shows up on the computer screen. Brandon Fong, free lunch, $0.00. And the one thing that I didn't add in the beginning is I went to a really wealthy school district. So like I was open enrolled in this school district. If you look up the zip code, it's like there's some pretty wealthy kids in the area. And so that's why I was so embarrassed, is because I was one of the few kids that was on this free lunch program. And I didn't want any of my wealthy friends to find out. So I had all these different tricks and ways of, striking up a conversation right before I was about to type in my student ID, or hiding out in the bathroom a little bit extra longer so that I didn't have to go through the lunch line with everyone else. And as I look back on that experience, it was painful going through it, but it was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. As I've had an opportunity to rewrite my stories as an adult, I realized that if that hadn't happened, my life would be completely different, because I have the world's best parents. And if I had been given everything, I wouldn't have had to figure out how to do things on my own. Like I had to pay for my contacts because I was made fun of for wearing those glasses that I described before. So I had to figure out a way to do that. And I used to be so mad that why can all my friends ask for whatever the heck they want and they get it? They turn 16, they get a car. Like why can't I have that? But it was because that I was challenged. It was because that I had incredible loving parents, but sometimes the financial resources weren't there, that I had to start to figure things out. So I say that to share the story, but also to encourage you. What are those stories that are wounding you, or may have been of something in the past that you have an opportunity to actually rewrite and turn it into an empowering story? Because if you had told me a few years ago that I was going to share that story on podcast publicly, I would have said there's no way in hell I would ever share that. But I'm just grateful for it now, and I've transformed into something that is serving me. So there you go, Dr. P. There's the story.
I think that's huge. And the idea of stories, we carry stories with us, and what we do with stories is really important, right? We give meaning to every story. And you could have said, well, every time that zero showed up, that you weren't paying for something, you could say it made you less than. And that could be the story of your life. And you said, that's not the story of my life. What's true is I have the best parents in the world. What's true is I get to take charge. What's true is, right? And so you made that story a bounce story, right? It's like that didn't label you. That gave you a foundation to be strong from. And I think that any adversarial kind of condition that we face now is really an opportunity for that. My last TEDx was on a parallax perspective. Can you look at any situation slightly differently, knowing that there's more information? And really, that more information has to do with whatever meaning you bring. So you did bounce and you met somebody. Like, I know enough about your story to kind of ask you about the next level, the next piece. You met a teacher or somebody who offered you guidance about how to engage with people. And that left you kind of opening doors that you didn't even know you could open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just want to share on something that you said that was just so valuable about the parallax perspective. But it's like, I've been blessed to connect with some pretty high level people. And one of the things I've realized that is a fundamental human need is the need for other people to provide you with perspective. Like I'm a spike ball player. If you don't know what that is, it's like a newer game. It's kind of like a trampoline thing. And it's like, I can't get better at my serve unless I actually watch a videotape of myself doing it. So it's like, what you said about perspective of like, yes, you have the ability to take control and give yourself a different perspective, but also surrounding yourself with people that can see you and call you out on the things that you said before and create an environment. So I guess that kind of just came full circle. But that's to tell the other story about the somebody that showed up in my life. So I knew I wanted to be entrepreneurial, and I had this opportunity. There was this high school club called DECA, and I got to compete with this entrepreneurship business plan. And so I grew up where my dad owned a restaurant. And so the only thing I knew was to come up with a business plan for a restaurant. So I came up with this brilliant idea. Everyone hold your breath. It was called the Sizzlin' Ninja. It was the Sizzlin' Ninja food truck. We were going to cook hibachi style, and it was kind of the funniest thing I could come up with. So I come up with this business plan. I go and I compete at the state competition. I give this presentation, and I find out that I win first place in state. I'm super excited. I get to go to this national competition. I'm on a high until the next day. I have a meeting with my advisor for this club and the other people that qualified, and she slides the itinerary for the nationals trip across the desk, and I'm leafing through it. I'm like, oh, we get to do this. That's so cool. We get to all do this. And then, of course, I reach the bottom of it, and my heart sinks again because I see the cost of the trip. It's like $1,050.80 or something like that. And, you heard from before, it's like, I had to figure out how to pay for contacts. It's like, oh, here's another thing. Like, I don't know how we're going to be able to afford this, how I'm going to be able to figure this out. I was working $7.25 scooping custard at a local place, which from Wisconsin, it's a big difference between custard and ice cream. So don't ever tell a Wisconsinite that it's the same thing, because it's not. But anyways, I had to figure out how to pay for this trip. So I go home and my dad's like, well, I have an idea. I know somebody that is actually the president of a nonprofit organization. She has to fundraise all the time. What if she showed you how you could fundraise? So he introduced me to Brenda Campbell, becomes my first mentor. I don't know what the heck she saw in me. I was 16 years old. My email address was asianninja221@gmail.com, but she decides to open up her Rolodex and connect me with some really high level people and teaches me how to fundraise. And she told me one thing that absolutely changed my life. And she said, if you ask for money, you'll get advice. But if you ask for advice, you'll get money. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. Don't really know what that means. But she's like, let me show you. And so she introduces me to all these incredible people and tells me what you're going to do is you want to ask for feedback on your Sizzling Ninja business plan. And after they contributed and added value, and you're super grateful for everything that you have to be grateful for everything that they contributed. And then you can ask afterwards if they might be willing to support you on your trip to nationals. And so I do that. And all these people are donating $100, $200. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like it would take me so long to do that. And then 2 weeks before the trip, I'm still $500 short. And Brenda's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, but I forgot to introduce you to Kevin Kowalski. So Kevin Kowalski's kind of like he's got a local mastermind, a pretty successful entrepreneur. And so she introduced me to Kevin. I give the same pitch. And then the only thing that was different this time from the other ones was he stopped and he asked me, Brandon, how much do you have left to pay for the trip? I'm like, well, I got 2 weeks left and I'm like $500 short. And so he pulls out his checkbook. He writes something on it. I don't want to be rude and stare at it, but he writes a number on the check, and then he puts it in an envelope and then hands it to me and says, good luck, man. And then, of course, the first thing I do when I walk through the doors, I rip open the checkbook and I found out he wrote me a check for $500. And that was, I was on such a high because that was when I knew I got to go to this international competition. And I ended up going, I didn't place in state or didn't place internationally or anything like that. But what Brenda taught me there, what I saw, that the impact that one connection with Brenda that she made for me and opened me to a whole new world of, well, there's a better way of doing things. If I can learn how to connect and develop relationships with the right people, the magic that I can make happen is transformative. And so that's one thing that I would say there is like, I truly believe you're always one connection away. I've had all these incredible people that have stepped into my life, and my life wouldn't be the same without them. And so that was the valuable lessons that I learned from Brenda. And since then I've refined the connection stuff and all that good stuff along the way. But another incredible moments in my life that led to some game-changing opportunities.
So this is what you do now, is you make connections, you help people make connections, you teach people how to make connections. Is that like it?
Yes.
How would you describe, you meet somebody at a cocktail party, right? And it's like, well, Brandon, nice to meet you. What is it you do?
Well, that's always an interesting question because I always want to find out about the person in front of me first. It's like I think that's a hard one to answer, is because it's like if I'm talking to Dr. P, it's different than somebody else. But at the end of the day, what I do is I help people with B2B products and services to develop real relationships. And I came up with an acronym for the word real. It stands for, because like if I went back and I looked at all the best relationships in my life, these are the commonalities. It's respectful, effortless, appreciative, and loving. So those are the real relationships. It's like it just happened. It clicked. Dr. P, when we met, I got off the call. I'm like, man, this is a cool guy. So like it's like that effortless vibe of connecting with really cool people. And I found that so many people that have high ticket products and services, they usually say like, oh, I get so many great clients from masterminds or through warm networking and referrals. And that's fantastic. But what I found is that there's kind of a lack of ability that's within your control to actually, what are those relationships where you can identify the big needle mover relationships inside of your business? That could be high ticket clients, strategic partnerships. How do you think about that very strategically, but do it in a way that's like you're actually developing real connection with them instead of trying to microwave a relationship, right? And those take time. It takes a lot of thinking. So all that to say is I help people leverage the systems and structure I've developed to develop real relationships with needle mover people, and I can do it with my systems, not robots, which I think is a big difference because there's lots of the AI crap out there that's not exactly what I'm doing.
There's a lot of AI crap out there. So go through the REAL one more time, right? So it's respectful, effortless,
appreciative, and loving.
Appreciative and loving. So here's what I love about that. I'm writing. Okay, so what I love about that is that you're choosing to bring loving into the business world, which is fantastic, right? So I think that's been missing, right? The appreciative piece is almost like, well, it's another way of saying gratitude, right? Respectful, please. Just engage like a good human. Effortless, don't force anything. Just be you, allow the other person to be them. Appreciative is the gratitude. And then I love that you bring loving into it because that is so missing. And so I think people are allergic to, in general, and bringing that to business. And so I love that you're leveraging real. I think it's fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that it's one of the things I've struggled with is because I have like two parts to my brain. I have like the heart-centered kind of connection piece, but I also have lots of systems and structure behind it. So like that's where I feel like it's really cool. I feel blessed that I'm like have this ability and I've been able to kind of combine it in a way that makes sense. But that's where I think that like you said, the whole AI thing, there's lots of people that talk about scaling businesses with AI and outreach and all that kind of stuff. But like what I've really done is I've helped people to scale real relationships, which I think that at the end of the day, if you look at like fundamental human needs, like we all want those deep relationships. And if they turn into clients, if you can monetize that, that's fantastic. But if not, you're still developing those things, those deep connections that make the human experience the human experience.
I think one of the things that's key here is that, a lot of people, in my experience, a lot of people in networking are kind of like, they'll meet you and they're like, I wonder how much money I can get out of this guy. That's almost the way it feels. It's like, am I going to do business with him or not? It's like, and I've been at a lot of networking events where I either feel like I'm being sized up for how much money do I have available to invest in the next in that person, or I feel dismissed. It's like, yeah, not you. And it's like, that's like, you don't come into a networking group to go, where's mine? Where's mine? How do I get mine? Like, it's that's like a lack mentality. That's
100%. And I think that something that might help people on this is that I had this incredible opportunity where leveraging my connection skills that I learned from Brenda, I was a senior year in college, and I ended up reaching out to a really successful entrepreneur. His name was Jonathan Levy. And I was just a 21-year-old, and I can explain a little bit more about it. But the gist of it is that one outreach turned into me running his marketing for 3 years. I was behind the scenes, and during the time on the team, and we added over 100,000 students to our online courses, 1.5 million downloads on the podcast. And Jonathan got into this group. I don't know if you listening, you may or may not be familiar with it. It's called Genius Network. It's a group of high-level entrepreneurs, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, changing the world with their ideas, all that kind of stuff. So Jonathan, successful entrepreneur, gets in the group. He goes to his first meeting and he sends me a Slack message. He's like, dude, I need you to be here. I'm like, awesome. Oh my God. So I had this opportunity to go into Genius Network. I was 22 years old and contribute and participate. And the whole reason why I brought that up from what you were talking about, like people sizing you up and all that kind of thing, is because I think that there's a huge need to give everything and expect nothing in return, but you have to choose the right people to do that too, right? Like you can't, if you're doing that to somebody that's just going to take from you, then obviously it's a misalignment. But what I realize in observing high level groups like Genius Network is that really what those people are paying for when they pay $25,000 a year or $100,000 a year in to join those groups is all they're paying for is for who's in the room. Like
Yes.
they've created the criteria and say, hey, these are the kind of people you meet if you join the room here. So yes, you need to invest in real relationships. You need to contribute, but you also need to have a system and a structure for thinking about who are the kind of people that fit that criteria that you want to give and create a relationship with, where yes, it makes sense if it does turn into a business relationship, but if not, you're giving to the right humans that are going to create incredible good in the world. So I just think that distinguishing filter is really important for people to think about.
I think that's great too. I knew Joe Polish before he started that. So
When he had a ponytail.
way back. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and just to watch it grow and grow and grow over the years. So good for you. I think you made a good point there though, too, which is pay attention to who you're hanging around, right? Pay attention, that there will be people, and don't be one of these people that's all about get, right? But also be aware if you're around people that are all about get. And you can be a giver, you can show up and be someone to help leverage others or to give what generously, and at the same time be aware of vampires. Really, like
Yeah,
you don't want to just like open your veins and let people suck your soul out, essentially.
Yeah, it's funny because I when I created the acronym for real, I also did the same thing of like, what are the commonalities of the bad relationships I've had or the things I've had to let go? And there's another acronym for that. They're mad people. They're misaligned, annoying, and draining. and so
Awesome.
so you have to think about the ways that you are as you approach relationships. Like, what are the early indications of a mad person or a real person? And so it's just another interesting thing to think about. Is I've had to be more careful about of I think Derek Sivers, it's like hell yeah or no kind of a thing, and just like thinking about it a little bit more strategically instead of just kind of winging it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's important also to make sure that you're not one of the mad people, right? That it's I'm serious. That it's really easy for us to point out and to say, wow, that person's really misaligned. Wow, that person's really annoying. That person's draining. But I wonder if I could talk. I wonder if I could talk to this person, and you become one of the people that's misaligned, annoying, and draining to that person. And so it's
Yeah.
really, I think it's just really important that you keep track of who you are. And that happens. Here's something that I've learned in my growth. It's something I teach people along the way. Is that I love the acronym, right? The MAD acronym. You do become misaligned and annoying and draining if you are approval seeking. So if you are showing up and you are going, look at me, I'm worthy. Look at me, I've got this. Look at me, like you could be that annoying when all you're trying to do is to fit in. And the truth is, you'll fit in, and you'll know you fit in when you fit in. And just be really you. Just be you.
I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Dr. P, but like that's another commonality I've observed is this concept of worthiness. That like it's a fundamental thing where if you don't feel internally worthy about the people you're meeting or the business that you're creating, all that it creates all kinds of issues downstream. So like, what are some of the ways that you've experienced and the people that you work with and the people that you interview that you've helped people to step into their full worthiness or go deeper into that instead of playing at the surface level and kind of having those more insecure, like coming from a place of insecurity rather than a place of certainty and care for yourself?
It is huge. I mean, I run retreats, right? So the Exponential Success Summit is all based on you stepping into that worthy space, you stepping into that place of daring to desire. And here's the thing about it is worthiness and lovability are the key areas where people still fight to heal that wounded place in themselves.
Mm.
Am I worthy? Right. So here's the thing, like as kids, before you can understand the schema of the world, right? 5, 6, 7 years old, you have words, but you don't understand the way the world works. And so what you do understand is when your parents get mad and push you away. What you do understand is that, oh, there's not enough of this, and maybe you shouldn't even dare ask for it. So the not enough, the not worthy, the if you do ask, you get shut down and pushed away. And the biggest fear for most people is ostracism.
Mm.
That's why public speaking is the biggest fear for most people. It's not about speaking, it's about speaking in public and being judged. And if you're judged harshly, you will be shut out.
Mm.
Right. So that worthiness thing is something we all carry with us. And it shows up from time to time. And the real key here is to recognize you wouldn't already be in the situation you're in if you're not worthy. Like one of the strongest things that happened that pointed this out, I had this group of high level performers at one of my retreats. And one of them dared to say, it took a lot for me to get here. I'm not sure I belong. And I'm like, okay, wait. And I said, I want all of you to close your eyes. And they all did. And I'm like, okay, if you had a question about whether you are worthy of being at this table, I'd like you to raise your hand and just hold it there for a second. And 100% of the people at the table were like, I'm not sure I belong, right? I said, open your eyes. And everybody opened their eyes and everybody's looking at everybody else with their hands up. Like even the highest level performers sometimes have these questions of, I'm not sure I belong at this table. And it's like, okay, recognize you got yourself here. You got yourself to the room where other people are choosing to level up. You're choosing to level up. Awesome. That's what it's about. Make that choice every moment, right? Are you choosing to level up? Awesome. Then you are going to gather the people around you that are also choosing to level up. The other people you'll gather around you are the people that go, who do you think you are? How dare you level up beyond us? And it's like, okay, you have to be able to cut those off.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that so much. And that's one thing that I've just observed again through like what are the first principle concepts that really have downstream impacts on everything. Worthiness is one of them, but I think a big part of worthiness is your identity. Like, because your identity is what creates the narratives inside of your head, the stories that you're telling, which manifests everything else, And so that's one thing I've worked on a lot is being intentional about the identity that I have. Like this is I don't know if I've ever shared this on a show before, but I recorded like an audio tape, an audio program, a program. I know it's kind of a weird thing to say, but like I literally recorded, like, this is the conscious identity that I'm constructing right now. And I listen to it every day. I have it as a habit. But like that's something that I think is, most people don't think about it. It's like it's invisible thing that is kind of impacting all of our lives. It's like, there's this quote that comes up on my show all the time: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life and you will call it fate. That's by Carl Jung. And exactly what you're talking about before, about those early childhood experiences. It's just like everybody's walking around with these wounds. Everybody has you may not have walked through a free lunch line like me, but you were made fun of as a kid, or maybe your parents weren't even meaning to say something to you, but you interpreted it some way, and that was hurting and wounding for you. So like just being very conscious about the identity that you're constructing, the stories that you're telling yourself, that along with worthiness and like you just shared, like the fact that you're not alone, that even at the highest levels people feel this. And I think that takes a huge weight off of many people's shoulders when you realize that that's the case.
I think it's great. The doctor part of Dr. P is clinical psychology, right? So the fact that you're quoting Jung, it's like, yay, this is awesome. I quote Emerson, who said that a mind once expanded can never return to its original dimensions. And that's the whole part of growth as well. Once you figure out that you are bigger than the life you're currently leading and you see the opportunity, you can't go back to living small. And it's fabulous, right? So worthiness is a big deal. Identity, it's interesting. I mean, one of the reasons you're here, I think, is that we have similar thoughts from very different directions.
Mm.
And so I appreciate this, Brandon. It's really great. The book over my shoulder called Dynamic Transitions talks about, um, you're not who you were 20 years ago. You're not. But that person 20 years ago got you to who you are today.
Mm.
Right? You're not who you were 20 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 2 years ago,
Ah,
or even yesterday. You've
100%.
you've grown. Here's where people get stuck, and where you're creating a program for yourself is brilliant, because most people don't do this.
Yeah.
People recognize I'm not who I was 20 years ago. They recognize that. What they don't do is say, this is who I want to become. So if I want to become this person that's a multimillionaire, or if I want to become this person that has a job that I love and a relationship I love and a house that I love, what they don't recognize is, starting now, what values do I need to live into? Like, what actions fulfill the values of that person that I want to be? And
Mm.
most people don't take that path, and you did, and you
No,
are.
I appreciate that. My friend, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, just wrote a book called Be Your Future Self Now. I haven't read it yet, but I know that that's kind of the topic of it. But something that I've observed as well, I love this conversation, but it's like a pattern I've realized from some of the high level people I've spent time with. It's like they have this ability to externalize, right? Like I had Todd Herman on my show. He wrote the book called The Alter Ego Effect. And
Yeah.
one of the things that stuck with me when he was on my show is he talks about Todd in the third person. It's like I'm like, Todd is doing this, and that's really interesting. And like, so I've been trying to adopt that. Or I had on the chief business officer of Google X, Mo Gaudat, on my show. And sorry, I'm name dropping right now, but like he mentioned, like, he calls his brain Becky. Like when his brain is doing something. And I'm sorry if there's a Becky listening. It's just like Mo apologizes on my show too about anybody that happens to be named Becky. But it's like he talks to his brain like it's an external thing. And I think that when you externalize yourself, when you externalize your brain, and I journal like religiously on lots of my stuff. And I had this idea the other day as you were saying this, and I haven't quite, I don't know how I would even implement it, but I do bi-weekly sprints, and I do a journal at the end of every single month. And so like every 2 weeks, I'm looking back, like, what was the wins and progress that I've had, and I do it every single month, and I do it every single year. But like the funny thing is, like, when you look back at a year ago, it's like so different than like the one right now. So like, as another way of externalizing, this is going to sound very robotic, but like I'm like the version I'm on right now, I'm Brandon V26.5. Like my birthday's in February. So like I'm on V26.5, and it's like V26.5 Brandon is going to be way different than V26.8 or V25 Brandon, but I think that that's kind of a fun way that I've been playing with externalizing some of this stuff, because I think that when you can write it down and look at it or treat it as something separate, it allows you to actually work on it instead of it being so close to you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I would encourage you to use the Dan Sullivan question also, which is, in 3 years, what has to have happened? So what's the V29.5 version of you? Like on the verge of being 30 at that point, right? And
yeah,
and it's 100%. like, wow, who will you be? And how will you be, and how do you choose to be, and to recognize that as much as you can see yourself shifting, there's a lot of change in a 5-year span, especially where you are, right? Especially like for the millennials, right? To go, okay, this 5 years was crazy, it was all about me. This 5 years is all about stability. How do I gain some stability in my life? And as you enter into, your 30s, you are building that stability and beginning to build legacy. And you're miles ahead. Like, you're miles ahead because you're thinking in a way of, how do I create the future me I want? Now, you're doing also something that, as long as we're referencing psychologists, you're doing something that Fritz Perls talks about, actor observer. So the externalization that you're talking about, Fritz Perls was the founder of Gestalt psychology back in the 50s. And he talks about actor observer, and you talk about externalization. Well, it comes from that, which is, can you be in the moment? Because when you externalize, it's sort of like, well, that person, that thing, right? And it's like, be in the moment, feel it, and watch the moment.
Mm.
Right. And that's the integration that I think is missing from what you just said, which
Sure.
is you're both. You're not just like, well, I've got to do this, right? Because if you think about spirit integration, spirit's not outside of you, it's coming through you, right?
Mhm.
So and a lot of people will have their own version of this. That's the simplified thing. Like, if you look outside, you have to pay attention to who's doing the looking,
Mm.
right? So the integration of that is, I am doing the looking, I am externalizing. Well, who's the
Mhm.
I,
Mhm.
right? And so that's the person in control. The good news about this is that that person can shut down the fear that the subconscious brings up. The fear is the fear of change, is the subconscious saying, we've never done this before, it's
Mhm.
dangerous. and and so the I needs to go, I'm in control, it's going to be fine, it's unknown, that's cool. And the subconscious is like, don't do it. But that's what fear is for. Fear is to make you aware. It's not to stop you, it's to make you aware. So recognize that there's this integration that happens, right? Also, externalize, but be in your body,
Yeah, I
right?
love that. I love the Surrender Experiment, Michael Singer, and Eckhart Tolle stuff as well. So yeah, I think that you're right. That was missing from that way that I added that. But I appreciate you reminding me that to not forget the I, because it's like there is no such. There really is, like, the future and the past are all constructs, right? Like the only thing that ever really exists is it sounds like a
Yeah.
woke spiritual thing, but it's like the only thing that ever really exists is now. Like the past and the future are all, so I can't forget about V226.5 Brandon right now. Like he's a thing. The other ones are real or not real.
Yeah. Well, so again, all things are created twice, once in imagery and once in actuality, right? So you create them in the physical world. So you are in
Yeah,
the act of becoming. That's awesome.
100%.
And yeah, and then you fine tune that. All right. So here's a question. Um, where do you see yourself going with all this? Like, what really is your business? Do you have a business of connecting people? Is that the thing? And where are you going? What is the next version? What's the 27.5 version and the 28.5 version?
Yeah.
Where are you headed?
So if I go and I look back out through my life, like the biggest pattern that emerges is this theme of connection, starting from the Brenda Campbell story to the connecting with Jonathan Levy story to just like, I don't know what it is, but like when I say connection, I say it in every sense of the word. And I mean that connecting deeper with myself, as you tell, like I'm really introspective, connecting with other people, connecting other people with resources. And it just so happens that I believe that podcasting is the greatest expansion of that gift. And so I believe that we are in a crazy point in the world right now where one of the biggest things that we all need is connection. Yet, like all the technology that was designed to make us more connected is like doing the exact opposite of what we need it to be doing. So,
Mm,
like, I really my mission is to create a more deeply connected world. And so by contributing that gift to other podcasters or helping other people leverage a podcast, that's one of the greatest ways I can do it. So so that is the business model right now. If you want to put that label on it, is helping people to leverage a podcast to develop real, again, not the actual acronym, real business relationships systematically and it giving way in a way that expands the business and helps lands more clients, but also does more good in the world, right? So that is the focus of growth right now. But like when you talk about V27, V28, 30, my goal, Dr. P, has always been just to have a family. Like that's really what this is about for me. It's creating an impact, but it's also like it's being a dad. It's like I'm starting to think about that in this point in my life. It's like, man, like that's what's exciting for me is building a life where, yes, I'm creating an impact and creating more connection, but it's like giving myself the freedom to spend time with my wife. We just had our 9-year together anniversary, 2-year wedding. So she's my high school sweetheart. But so that's been, that's always the vision. And really, if you wanted to say what's the V30 or beyond, it's like I would love a world where I get to create a massive impact with a small group of people. Like I truly believe that the right small group of people can make massive waves in the world. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
need a ton if you have those selection like I was talking about before, and you do that structure like in a structured way. So business with not a lot of moving parts, simple, like under 5 employees. Myself, I get to do what I love and be a podcaster. Get to spend time with my wife and future family, and invest in cool experiences. Like I've been to 23 countries, and one of my top needs from the human needs test is growth. It's the number one thing is growth. And so like with that comes, like, I would love to just invest in learning new stuff, like my wife and I I'm doing it now, obviously just in an expanded version later, but like my wife and I, we took an improv class a few weeks ago. Like anybody can do that right now. Highly would recommend anybody do an improv class. $300, go and learn some improv. It'll change your life. So like that, or investing in a billiards coach. I'm a huge billiards guy. So like those are the kinds of investments and things that I want to do. And maybe it's windsurfing. I don't know. Like just like a whole bunch of random stuff. But that's the future me and what I'm building.
I love all of that. It is so good. The whole idea about improv, by the way, one of the key lessons you learn early on is yes and. Mm-hmm. And being able to take any situation and add to it versus what's it supposed to be. It's like, well, I was just handed this and versus but, shut it down. It's like this and I'm going to add to it. So
yeah, you take yourself less seriously. It's just like it's a great tool for, like, one in the showcase that we had for my improv class. We were the group, the suggestion was beef jerky shop or something, beef jerky or something like that. And it ended up being us on a quest to find the perfect beef jerky recipe that, we had to go on the top of a mountain with ogres to bring it, nice. So it's like, it's that kind of stuff. You can't take yourself seriously when you're going to the top of a mountain to get the world's best beef jerky recipe. So would highly encourage anybody to do an improv class. I'm glad that you've experimented with that as well, it seems like.
Yeah, well, I think it helps anybody in business. I think it helps anybody in relationships. It's like if you take only the lesson of yes and, right? That no matter what you're given, here's a steaming pile of poo, right? It's in a sack, and now the sack is caught on fire, and you are handed this. Instead of panicking, it's okay, here's a situation, and what do I do with it? Yeah. And it stops you from being in this place of judgment of, oh, this is the worst thing ever, to here's a situation, it's neutral until I bring it meaning. So it's neutral, and what do I get to do with it versus what do I have to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. And that is the key. Like, yes, it when you stop taking yourself seriously, that's one of the things I say. I don't take myself seriously, take my work seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. And I think that is key also, because if you pull your ego out of it, then the situation is just the situation. That's, it's up to you to bring meaning to it. And that's why yes and in an improv is like, that's awesome. Same thing for windsurfing. It's like, it's not a track that you are on. The wind, the water, it's all different. It's all different. And so and so you respond versus react, right? You respond. Yeah. So I love all of this. Brandon. It's it's so good. Cool. Is there anything you were hoping that I would ask you, or a point or a story that you were hoping to be able to make that we haven't touched on yet?
I would love to give people a rundown of my magic connection method process. So like if you want more real relationships, like how do you actually go about doing that? What are some ways that you can think about it? So I'm working with our mutual friend Michael Roderick on framing these ideas and that kind of stuff. But yeah, right now it's called the Magic Connection Method. I've stuck with it for several years, but now I'm really working on packaging my stuff. But anyways, like if you are listening to this right now and you want more of those real relationships, like how do you actually start? Like it sounds great in theory, but like what do you actually do? Like if you found someone on LinkedIn or you listen to them on a podcast and you have their email address and you're staring at a blank cursor, like what the heck do you say? And so like I would love to share that if that's cool with you.
I would love that is golden. And I forgot we had Michael Roderick in common. He's awesome. I'll just point out something really, really quickly about one of the things that he helped me frame. And for those watching, you can see the books over my shoulder. My first book was Choosing Your Power. And one of my more recent ones was Dynamic Transitions. And in the middle is The Significance Factor. And I have two others out there that are leadership books. And he's like, you started by really focusing on and essentially selling hope. And now you're really focusing on and essentially selling excellence. And it's like just that clarity of what is it that I am putting in the world. And I think for each of us to step in and go, this is the clarity. This is what I'm putting into the world. I no longer have to inspire hope, although that is a part of what I do. I take people to the next level of excellence. And that makes it so powerful and so clear. So yes, I wanted to give a shout out to Michael.
Yeah,
brought his name up.
Send Michael some love. Have you had him on the show? Has he been on the show?
Yes, actually, he has been on the show.
And everybody go listen to that episode. And also, I would love for people to come join me and listen to Michael Roderick on my show. If you love the way that I package, Michael's whole thing is getting people to talk about you when you're not in the room. So he's clearly doing it right now, as Dr. P and I are talking about. So he's influencing. It's worked in some of his voodoo magic. So like if you like the acronyms, the real, the mad. I'm going to share another one right now. Like all that came from Michael Roderick's brain. So love you, Michael, if you happen to listen to this. But yeah, go check out the episode that I did with him or with you as well. So anyways,
I'll alert him and he'll know. That's awesome. I was just reading he does a daily blog as well. So I read that every day. So talk about this real connection. Talk about this, because that's kind of golden. And if there's this golden nugget that we can leave our audience with today, that would be amazing.
We'll leave you with this, and I'll give you some homework. So like I would love, and I'll say my email publicly. My email is brandon@brandonfong.co. So shoot me an email if you end up sending one of these. Like I would love to hear and connect with you, hanging out with us today. So anyways, going back to the blank cursor, like you have someone you want to reach out to. How do you actually build that relationship? What do you say? So here's the acronym that comes for this 3 steps. It's AVE, like an avenue to developing a relationship with someone. So it stands for appreciate, value, and end with a question. So it's appreciate, value, end with a question. And I'll walk through this, and I'll actually use an example from a story that I shared earlier of connecting with this guy named Jonathan Levy. So, here I was, some 21-year-old college student, like no experience besides like some clubs or whatever I was in. Like, what do I do to reach out to develop a relationship with this guy that's got a TED Talk and all this crazy stuff, right? So the email went something like this, and then I'll kind of deconstruct it. And this was the first V1.0 of this. It's gotten a little bit stronger, but it was something along the lines of like, hey, Jonathan, listen to episode 37 that you did with Noah Kagan. Absolutely loved it. And I took what you implemented and XYZ. Thank you so much. So like that was obviously off the top of my head, but I made it really specific. Like this is exactly what I learned and this is how I applied it. After checking out what you're up to, I found out that there were several things that I would love to help support and contribute with. And I came up with 3 specific projects I'd love to help you do. Totally up to you. And I'm not offended either way, but I would love to do this 100% for free. If you like my work, then we can work together. But if not, then you didn't waste anything. And so that was something along the line. So it's not perfectly the magic connection method, but that you'll see kind of the skeleton of what I just mentioned. It's like it started with appreciation. It started with a value that I can add with him, and it ended with a question. And obviously, you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do free work for everyone. That's not the point of this. The point is like, I was 21 years old. I could do free work, but like, what is you always have to think about it from the other person's perspective. So, do you want anything you want to say, Dr. P, or should I go through?
What was the question? What was the question you ended with? Because
in that email, it wasn't quite at that format. I'll give you guys the question so you guys can actually do it. But like, if I were to rewrite that email now, it would end something like this, like 100% up to you, but would you be opposed to me sending over the ideas that I came up with to you? So like, it ends with a question. There's no, so
I want to point out something. The Voss, what's his first name?
Chris Voss.
That's Chris, exactly yeah. So did you? Yeah, you took that.
Yeah, well, I'll get that when I get to the E. How about that? And I'll make sure that I explain. I'll make sure that I explain it. So anyways, like
the grand negotiator. This is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So I would challenge you, and you can do this right now if you want to. If you're listening, or Dr. P, like if you open up your LinkedIn profile, or if you open up your email inbox, I guarantee you that somewhere within the last 24 to 48 hours, you've been sent a message where somebody copy and pasted something to you, or they didn't actually get it. Like they said, yeah, this is all the stuff that I'm up to. Like I had somebody reach out to me the other day. They're like, I've done XYZ, all these big companies, and I have chosen to connect with you. It's like, oh, thank you, for being you so high and mighty, and you're going to connect with me, my lowly being.
Right.
So I find that this is like, it's funny online. We forget how to be human. Right. It's like when you're driving, you're never the bad driver, right? Like you're never the guy that accidentally cut someone else, but everybody else is a bad driver. And it's the same thing when we're reaching out to people. It's like you forget how to actually behave like a human. So the first thing you want to do is you want to set yourself apart from all those other people that have sent those crappy messages, and actually take the time to get to know the person. Like research them. Do they have a podcast? Have they written a blog? Like were they featured on another podcast? Like what's something they did? And like always go for a very specific thing that you can genuinely appreciate about them. So I call this like the love plus specific formula underneath the appreciate. But like if you can copy and paste this message to someone else, it's not specific enough, right? So go and find something that they're doing, something that's really cool, and say loved this LinkedIn article that you found out. I specifically liked when you talked about this component. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you took the time to actually care about this human that you're reaching out to. So that's the first thing. The second thing is where you transition to the value that you can add to them. So many people are trying to get or close you to come on a call or something like that. Like think about it from their perspective. What is the value that you can add to them? So if I were to reach out to someone to bring them on my podcast, I would say something along the lines of, I've been blessed to have some really cool people. I always love making right fit introductions, if it makes sense. It happens to be a top 2% show on Listen Notes in less than a year. And so you'll get a little bit of exposure. I spend a lot of time researching each of my guests, and I, hear some things that they've said. So it's like they know from their perspective, it's like, okay, he's going to actually take the time to research me on the show. He's like willing to make introductions that actually make sense. And like, yeah, I'll get to do a show. So it's a way that I can add value. So and for Jonathan, I was doing free work for him, so it's like, those are all the things. Or Dr. P right now, like he cares so much about you listening to this right now. Like it's so important that like the people that he comes on the show, that they're actually going to share content that is valuable, and they're not going to try to pitch you on crap, right? It's like adding value, all that kind of stuff. So what from the perspective of the person that you're reaching out to, what is the value that you can add to them, right? So you appreciated them, the value, and the last thing is you end with a question. And so going back to what you said, what you observed very astutely about Chris Voss. Chris Voss wrote the book Never Split the Difference. He was an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. So this is the dude that's on the phone with a lunatic that's in the basement of a bank with a bomb, and he's about to blow up. Like, what do you say to that guy, right? And so he teaches this concept of a no-oriented question, where every single day we have a finite amount of yeses that we can give, because every single time we say yes, it means we're giving our time, our energy, our effort, something, right? But on the exact opposite, saying no makes you feel secure. It makes you feel like you're not, giving something away. So he teaches to ask no-oriented questions. It makes it a lot easier. That paired with another thing that I've learned, there was this study that they tested to see what phrasing that they could use that would that would have people give more charitable contributions or something like that. And these researchers test all these different phrases, and they realize that the one phrase that significantly increased the amount that people gave is, but you are free to accept or refuse. It sounds kind of awkward, but like the idea behind it was choice, right? Like that you're not being forced into something. It's like it is opening the door to a choice. So I combine those two things together. So the way that I usually end with something is 100% up to you, but would you be opposed to me sending over next steps for XYZ? Or if in the value thing, I like, hey, I put together a Google Doc with 3 specific XYZ, 100% up to you, but would you be opposed to me sending over the Google Doc for you to check out? So that's it. And if you think about this, again, I'm going to challenge you listening right now. Go open your email inbox. What are the emails that you haven't responded to yet? They're the emails that are complicated, that are hard to read. Somebody sent you a paragraph. They're asking for something. You have to go do XYZ and come back. It's hard to respond to those. The emails that are easy to respond to, it's easy to read. They show that they added value to you, and it's very clear on what your next step is. And so if you look at this format, it's like we cared about the person, we added value, and we ended with a question that ends with a question. You don't add anything else at the end. You know that you have to respond with answering that question. And if you ask a no-oriented question, like 100% up to you, but would you be opposed to me sending you over next steps to feature you on my show? You can answer that email by saying, yeah, or yeah, no problem. Send over next steps. Like, it's less than a sentence. So that is it. If you're looking to open the door to incredible relationships, I call it the magic connection method right now, but make sure you're walking the avenue to the relationships, AVE, appreciate, value, and end with a question.
That's fabulous. All right. So if people want to find you, it's Brandon. And I'm going to guess that a lot of people misspell that and call you Brendan or call you.
Oh, sure.
Right. So it's BRANDON, Brandon,
yep.
at brandonfong.co. That's how they'll email you. And your website is brandon-fong.com, right?
Yeah, so that'll transition over to my podcast, as I have it as a setup as a redirect right now. So my podcast is called 7-Figure Millennials. It's all about inspiring entrepreneurs to prioritize their happiness, health, and relationships as we make our entrepreneurial dreams a reality. And I come from the perspective of not being the guru on top of the mountain, but rather the guy that is going on a journey and sharing what I'm learning. So I'm still building my first 7-figure business right now and learning from some incredible people along the way. And I've been pretty blessed to have some pretty awesome humans on the show. And if Dr. P's down for it, we'll love to have him on. So like, I'll put him on the spot, and so he can't say no in front of me. So maybe you can listen to that episode.
Would I be opposed to? No, I wouldn't be opposed to joining you at all. This is awesome.
Unless he shoots me down right now, because that'd be pretty awkward.
That guy. I just had a, it's like, that's awesome. No, wow, Brandon, I see a long future connection with us. And so I really appreciate that. I'm a fan of Lift as You Lead, and you are absolutely demonstrating that every step of the way. You learn stuff and you share it, and you learn stuff and you share it, and you bring stuff and you bring people into your network, into your circles, and you share it big time on your podcast. Fabulous. So please, 7-Figure Millennials, it's easier to spell brandon-fong.com.
You're right. It's a mistake I made, because it's the number 7, and people can't spell the word millennial. It's 2 N's and 2 L's. So it's the number 7-figure MILLENNIAL. So if you want to just jump directly to a show, since we already mentioned Michael Roderick, like that might be a great step, is like, go find my show, listen to the episode with Michael Roderick. But I think that'd be a good next step for someone.
Really good. Okay. Anything else that we should be talking about? We covered a lot.
We covered a lot. I appreciate you so much for having me on. I'm grateful that we got connected and all that good stuff. So, I'm looking forward to having people implement this. Like, honestly, like I love challenging people, so it's like somebody connected me to some 20-year-old that started the podcast the other day. I'm like, all right, dude, like, here's 3 things you could do. And like, I'd love to hop on a call with you, but like, do it. And like, let me know what you think about it. So I would love for anybody to take me up on the challenge. Like, if you have somebody you've been wanting to connect with, send them an email. The worst thing they can do is they say no. Like, maybe I'll end on that. That's something I learned from my dad. It's like, he always taught me, and it was, it sunk in at an early age, which is different than hearing it now as an adult. But it's like, I was never afraid to ask. My dad just told me, like, well, if they say no, like, can you get over it? And like, yeah, then okay, then just ask. And like, if you're coming from this perspective of appreciating the person, thinking about what's valuable for them, and you're ending with a question, you don't have to feel like you're trying to manipulate someone into something, because that's not what you're doing. Is you're adding legit value to them. So like, no, they're not going to respond back to you and tell you to screw off or anything like that. And like, unless you did it wrong. But like,
and even if they did, so what?
Yeah,
right?
So what? It's an email. You can get over it. So I would appreciate and challenge anybody to do that. And thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, hey, it is a thrill, Brandon. Thank you for joining me. Truly, it is really, really good. I appreciate you as a good human. I appreciate what you brought to the show. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. And I'll say one more thing just to poke fun at you, just 'cause it's kind of funny. When I sent Dr. P the initial email, I put a link to other shows I've been on, and he was like, "Dude, all you're doing is giggling on this show." Like it was other shows that I've been on
Yeah,
of reacting, and so I will change that. I appreciate that. So hopefully, I was able to provide some value instead of just giggling today.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You did. That was. It's funny. I was telling somebody else about that. That it's like when I went to check you out. Here's a reel, and it's like all these great people that you've met, and they're saying good things about you. And I wanted to see how you were on a show, and all it was like was, "Ha, yeah, that's true." Ha. It's like, dude, I don't get to know you on your reel, so
Yeah,
I get to
I
know that
will.
other people like you. But anyway,
Yeah,
now here you are. It's real. It's real. It's AVE, and it's great. So,
not mad.
Brandon, again, thank you. I appreciate you seriously as a truly as a good human and as someone with just so much to bring and so much. Um, you really do. You're lifting people as you make your path, and it's really fabulous. So thank
Thank
you.
you so much. I
All
appreciate
right.
it. Thanks for the awesome interview.
Truly. All right. This is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. My guest today has been Brandon Fong, and I am Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Exponential Success Coach. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you here next time.